Hello and welcome to Alien Places, the show where I ask my guests which three places they would show an alien visiting Earth to give it a sense of the key issues facing human society. And for today's show, I'm joined by Steve Allain, the pop-punk herpetologist who's currently doing a PhD, and he describes himself as eccentric. So, Steve-O, can you tell us why you describe yourself as eccentric?
Well, I would describe myself as eccentric because I'm that sort of person that you meet down the pub and, will easily talk your ear off about reptiles, amphibians, the environment, conservation, you name it. I could talk for literally years if possible. And yeah, hopefully that comes across as being passionate as well. But, some people just see it as a little bit annoying sometimes. But yeah, that's why I describe myself that way.
Well, passion and being eccentric can often get confused. So, for this, herpetology is a branch of zoology that deals with amphibians and reptiles, and that's your area of interest.
It is, yes. Although when you tell people that you're a herpetologist, you sometimes get some confused and bemused looks because that they make a different link. But once you explain what it is, they tend to understand.
Yeah, great. And so can you tell us a bit about your PhD? What are you currently studying for your PhD?
So at the moment, I am looking at the population dynamics of barred grass snakes here in the UK and also the effects of disease. So despite the fact that grass snakes are quite a widespread species and, people see them all the time in the garden ponds, in compost heaps, when they're out walking the dog, etc. There isn't much information out there or research that's been done previously looking at the populations, conservation status, etc. They've been disregarded because they're widespread and not seen as rare or endangered. And I think because of that, they've slipped through the net a little bit. And so I'm currently looking at that side of things as well as the effects of disease on potential populations to see whether or not, the snakes are able to coexist with infection, or if they cause damaging effects to populations, as we've seen in other diseases in other animals and indeed people.
Yeah, well, very relevant in terms of the coronavirus conceptually, if not in terms of the detail that you're studying. Yeah,
exactly.
So you're actually the first Alien Places podcast guest who's read the whole book, so the whole of the Alien Places book. And I'm interested, and listeners might be interested to know, to what extent did the book influence or not influence your choice of places? Because obviously there's lots of places mentioned in the book, and since reading it, we're doing the podcast now. Was it easy to separate the two, or was there some kind of overlap, or how did you find that process?
So the locations and options chosen in the book did influence mine slightly because I wanted to try to make them different, but also make them meaningful to me at the same time. And so some of those options have already been taken, but as people will find out, I still ran with some of them despite the fact they've already been mentioned. I enjoyed reading the book. It was, very interesting. The concept itself is, in my eyes, quite unique. And instead of explaining the problems, issues, and solutions to the people, to the reader, you're doing it to somebody who's outside of that system and completely naive to everything. And then unknowingly throughout the course of the book, you become the alien, and I enjoyed it a lot. But yeah, it's one of those things that I had sitting on my bedside cabinet and read, in the evening before going to sleep, and it was quite peaceful and easy reading. So thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thank you for the good review that you gave it on your website as well, and for enjoying the book. The relationship between the book and the podcast, it's not meant to be a scientific experiment with a control group and finding out objectively which places people choose. So it's fine if there's a bit of overlap, and if that's naturally the places that you chose, then great. Yeah. Okay, so let's get into your three places. So where would be the first place that you would show an alien visiting Earth?
Okay, so the first place I would take an alien is the city of Cambridge. And there's a number of reasons for why that is. One is that it's the city where I studied my undergraduate degree at Anglia Ruskin University in zoology. I lived there for 6 years, and I was heavily involved with the local conservation scene, and still am to a lesser extent, although I don't live there anymore. And it's just a wonderful city. It's quite green. You often have to be careful of people cycling. You have to look both ways down the street, even if it's one way, because cyclists will come whizzing out from behind vans and corners.
The Allain and I communicate telepathically, and it's telling me now that it does approve of cycling as an environmentally friendly mode of transport. So it's at least happy to be there in Cambridge amongst the cyclists for that reason.
Oh no, of course. And the one thing I've noticed increasingly is that a number of the cars that are on the road are hybrid or electric. So people are moving away from from petrol and diesel, and moving towards more sustainable sources of energy. Which is great. I think it's leading the way in that sense. And also, Cambridge has some wonderful museums, which is I'd like to take the Allain to. There's the Subject Museum of Earth Sciences in Downing College, which has a vast collection of geological specimens from rocks, fossils, minerals, you name it. It's there mostly from the surrounding areas, which is quite cool.
Ian's saying he likes the sound of that, so
And then you also have the Museum of Zoology housed in the David Attenborough building, which has recently undergone a massive renovation, which is quite cool. And then around the corner from there, you have the Whipple Museum of Science, and so those three museums, twinned with the other ones in the area, which are more arts and anthropology. You need at least a day or two to go around them all. They're quite full on. There's lots of information, lots to see and do.
Yeah, great. Well, the Allain's got plenty of time for its trip around Cambridge. Would you take the Allain punting as well? Is that an option for the Allain? It's asking.
Oh no, of course, yeah. To take him punting, to get some beers and to just go on down the River Cam and have a great time.
Yeah, bit of Allain punting, great. And what about the song that you would play the Allain in Cambridge?
So the song that I would play would be "Hey You" by Pink Floyd. So Pink Floyd has this is where they filmed it in Cambridge. So there's lots of local stories and anecdotes of the guys going round to Grantchester Meadows and just milling out down there and writing music, as well as going up to Ely and other places around Cambridgeshire. So yeah, I think that any song would be fitting, but that one it is particular to me. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I like the idea of you and the Allain going down the river of punting in Cambridge with "Hey You" playing by Pink Floyd. So yeah, great.
Oh no, definitely. But when all of this coronavirus lockdown gets lifted, sign me up. I'm happy to do that whenever, particularly on a nice sunny day.
Great. And on your punting trip, have you got a tablet that you can set up and show the Allain a film?
Of course. So the film that I would show the Allain is The Theory of Everything, and I know it was mentioned in your book previously, but yeah, there are some great shots of Cambridge there. It shows the history and it shows the the intricacies and just how great the city is. Yes, it doesn't show everything, but it is still one of those things that I look back to now. And I remember going to the cinema in Cambridge when it was released, and thinking, how the hell did I miss these people taking these shots and filming things when I walked down those streets every day for a year or two before the film was released. So yeah, and it's also great to be able to see places you recognise and get their few minutes of fame on film.
That's always cool to see in movies, isn't it? When you see some places that you've been to yourself. One of the reasons I chose The Theory of Everything as one of the Allain film nights in the book is that, as well as sort of showcasing Cambridge itself, it also shows the Allain where humans are in their knowledge of the universe and space and black holes and what dark matter is and dark energy is. We don't know what dark matter and dark energy are. So for the Allain, it might be really up on that now. It might fully understand what dark matter and dark energy is. and we don't, and we are still looking for that unifying theory of everything, the unification of physics, and we're not there yet, and so that's another reason for showing the alien in that film.
Definitely, there, like with most films, and most pieces of art, there are multiple ways you can come at things and view things. And no, I definitely think that, it's a film that unifies, my love of Cambridge and also our understanding of physics. So, why not? Let's kill two birds with one stone and, explore both those things at the same time.
Yeah, because of course Professor Stephen Hawking was based in Cambridge, wasn't he? For most.
He was, yes, and I saw him out and about twice whilst he was still alive, which was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay, so that's Cambridge. So what about the second place that you show in Alien Visiting Earth?
So the second location is another location that's close to my heart. It's Mount Kinabalu in Sabah, Malaysia, on the island of Borneo, and I spent 3 months there in 2016 chasing frogs. So yeah, I was hot, I was sweaty, I was trekking for up to 18 hours a day, setting up transects, doing habitat surveys, doing nighttime amphibian counts, catching most of the individuals to take snout to vent measurements to sex if possible, to ID to species level if possible, if not genus was okay, and yeah, just collected as much data as physically possible, whilst having fun and gaining some very valuable field experience.
So which was the group that you went with? Was that with your university?
So it wasn't, no. So this was with a PhD student at the National University of Singapore. So I was just employed as one of her field assistants. But yeah, it was still extremely valuable and something I look back to regularly, despite the fact it was almost 4 years ago now.
So if you're taking the alien to Borneo to do some nighttime amphibian surveys, are you going to get the alien one of those nighttime headlamps? Is that right?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, we'll take the alien out with a head torch and a survey sheet, and get him involved with everything, because the more eyes the better. And sometimes particularly in the tropics with frogs, it's great to have a team of people that are all varying heights, because then you can see on the different levels of vegetation cover. So unfortunately, due to my height, I missed quite a few of the low-lying frogs because they were out of my eye line. But my colleagues,
with the alien, then it's a very short alien, so yeah.
Exactly. He despite my high levels of experience, I bet he'd be able to see it a lot more, just because he's at that better vantage point. Unfortunately, it wasn't practical for me to crawl around on my hands and knees.
Yeah, well, it's telling me now that it's looking forward to a nighttime survey in Borneo looking for amphibians, and it's asking me what type of amphibians, which examples of frogs are you likely to see out there, do you think? Or is the point that some of them would be new to science?
Yes, so some of them almost definitely are new to science, and in those areas, amphibians, new species are being described all the time. So just a little bit of facts on that. So at the moment, there are just shy of 8,200 species of amphibians known to science, and on average over the past 20 years, about 160 new species of amphibians are found every year, which is about one every 2 days. Which is mental. The reasons being are, an increased use of genetic techniques to be able to tease species apart. So, there's lots of, species complexes, which are these groups of species that all look the same, so they've all been lumped under one name for 100 years or more. And then, a researcher or a team of researchers have come along to be able to look at their population genetics and work out, if different animals in those groups, are interbreeding, maybe due to a geographical barrier, due to deforestation, and they want to make sure the population's safe, or another motivator. And then they get their lab results back, and it turns out that one species is actually 3 or 4 and not just one. So there's a number of examples of that, but also twinned with deforestation, a lot of areas have been opened up to researchers in recent years without having the need to trek for 3 or 4 days. So, some of the more remote areas have become accessible for the first time. And of course, people are going in to document everything before it gets lost, because, it's going to have, be affected by deforestation, climate change, all of the threats that we're aware of. So that's another big driver.
Yeah, well, the alien has excellent eyesight, so it might be a case of to humanize a certain species of frog might look the same as another 2 or 3 other species of frog. But well, we'll find out if the alien can visibly see differences between species that human eyes can't.
Oh no, definitely. And I'm not sure if you saw it, but there was a paper published recently that showed that under certain wavelengths of light, a number of amphibian species fluoresce. So maybe the alien will be able to pick up on that, and to us, a green frog sitting on a green leaf is going to be indistinguishable, but to him, he can, see that fluorescence and pick it up, as if.
Well, I didn't realise until I took the alien down to the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench that the alien itself can bioluminesce. So it's a bioluminescent alien, and some scientists say that bioluminescence is potentially the world's most pervasive form of communication. Because if you think how dark it is under most of the oceans around the world, and so many species using bioluminescence to communicate, then that could be considered one of the most popular, if not the most popular, most common form of communication. So the alien is telling me now that it's looking forward to having a bit of a bioluminescent chat with some of those frogs.
No, that sounds wonderful, and no, definitely, I hadn't thought about it before, but yeah, I can see that life in the ocean, using bioluminescence as a form of communication. And I think that one of the issues that I'm guilty of it sometimes as well is that the oceans tend to be out of sight, out of mind, and yeah, so I hadn't even considered that for a moment, but now it makes complete logical sense, and it's something that I'm probably going to go up and read up on later on, because it is completely satisfying my curiosity to find out more.
So you're in Borneo doing some nighttime amphibian surveys with an alien, and what would you put on the headphones? What would you be playing to the alien while you're doing your nighttime survey?
So the song that I'm most likely to play is "Mountains" by Biffy Clyro, just because it has a clear mountain theme. So Mount Kinabalu is the highest peak between the Himalayas and Papua New Guinea, and its highest peak is 4,095.2 meters. So it's pretty high. We were doing amphibian surveys up to about 3,300 meters. So yeah, that's one of the songs that I'd play the alien for a number of reasons. It's linked to the mountains, but also it's quite soothing, and has some relatively aggressive parts in that always help motivate you when you're trying to trek up an extremely steep-sided mountain.
Mm-hmm. Well, the alien's generally quite self-motivated, but it's saying to me now that it's always good to have a bit more motivational music while it's doing.
Of course,
and that kind of thing. So yeah, great. And what about a film? Which is the film that you would show an alien in Borneo?
So, just due to my experience in the tropics, I'd show the alien Tropic Thunder, and I know it's a comedy and it's meant to be funny, but yeah. Being out of your depth in the tropics is just like that, except you're not, kidnapped by a terrorist sect. It's hot, it's sweaty, and after the third or fourth day, you completely give up on trying to stop smelling, because you just get used to it. When you're out of civilization for a while, when just subsisting in a camp, or in the most basic of lodges with very simple amenities. It doesn't, it's one of those things that completely slips your mind. It goes out the window because you just want to focus on sleeping, eating, keeping hydrated, and I think that film summarizes a lot of that up, by finding yourself in a location that's partially familiar, but you're completely out of your depth, and trying to adapt whilst facing oncoming challenges from every way possible. It is another good way to look at things. And obviously with science, as well as you plan things, stuff will always go wrong.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Alien. As soon as you mentioned the title of that film, it just quickly watched the film Tropic Thunder in the internet in the air on high speed, and it's telling me that it enjoys the fact that Steve Coogan was in it.
No, it's got a great cast.
Yeah, and it's good. It's sometimes good to watch comedies with a serious message to them as well, because then kind of it makes it more accessible to watch that film, and you're kind of finding yourself enjoying watching it whilst also taking in important points. So it's a great choice.
Yes, definitely. I think it's one of those things that comedies can have important messages. They just package them in a slightly more accessible way for people to be able to understand and see. And this is one of those examples.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Okay, and what about the third place that you had taken, Alien Visiting Earth?
So the third place is back here in the UK, and is the Natural History Museum in London. And if you know me personally, you'll know it's one of my favourite places in the world. And yeah, I take the Allain around the museum, give them a personal tour of my favourite galleries, and provide as much information as possible to explain what he's seeing, and what's there. And some of the reasons why it holds a dear place in my heart is that I've been going there for as long as I can remember. It's essentially a shrine to zoology and the study of the natural world, whether that be animals, geology, or all of the other interconnected parts of that. And so yeah, it just summarizes everything nicely under one roof, and you can lose yourself in there for days, and always find something new to read or look at or to experience.
Did you go there when Dippy the dinosaur was there?
I did, yes. And so instantly enough, I was in London 3 days after after Hope, the blue whale went on display. And so going into the museum for the first time in 20 years, and not having Dippy there to greet me, but instead having this blue whale was, quite an emotional experience. But yeah, it was one of those things that I'll never forget is just walking into the main hall and seeing the whale for the first time. One thing that I realised is that by removing Dippy, there's a lot more open floor space than there used to be.
Well, it wasn't the whole blue whale, is that right? Because the blue whale is the biggest animal that's ever lived on this planet, including all the dinosaurs.
It is, yes. And I think that one of the main reasons why it is that that blue whales and other aquatic life have the support of the water to give them additional support to their huge bodies, whereas on dry land to be able to grow that large, you have huge support in your legs or other appendages that obviously limits how big animals can grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting to show the alien the reasons why different animals in different environments have evolved in different places, because of course the evolutionary path of the alien and the alien's planet is by definition going to be very different to ours. So the alien's saying that it's interested to hear more about the different evolutionary paths that the various species shown at the Natural History Museum have taken. Are there any other particular exhibits or aspects of the Natural History Museum that you'd point out to the alien?
Just to satisfy my inner 6-year-old, obviously the dinosaurs, got to take the alien around there, but also, there are a number of other galleries that, stand out in my mind. So there's the hidden treasures, where there's stuff in there such as, Archaeopteryx, there's, some Neanderthal skulls, there's a great auk, a passenger pigeon, some extinct animals that have, only gone extinct in recent times. So I think it would be important to, to highlight those and, just make the point of why these animals went extinct. Obviously there's nothing we can do about it now, but hopefully if something like that was going to happen again today, we've got the information, we've got the responsibility and the capacity and resources to be able to do something about it.
It's interesting that you mention Extinction because, of course, you'll know from the book that that the reason that the alien has come to visit our planet is because it considers humans at risk of extinction. So from the alien's perspective, it's very interesting to see a species which is using a natural history museum to remember other species that have been extinct without necessarily really accepting that humans themselves are extinct or at risk of extinction.
Of course, yes. And maybe, the alien will be the one there to, to provide some sobering thoughts and information, on, that topic. But yeah, I think that, we would be able to have, an enjoyable day or two walking around and, discussing things and explaining bits and pieces, the other side of things that the Natural History Museum, does well is explaining space and geology. So it would be interesting to hear on the alien's thoughts and differences, of his homeworld and, just everything else, and see if we can put some dots together and try to figure out, some of the answers of the universe without even, realizing the grandeur of our discoveries.
Yeah. Okay, and which song would you play the alien at the Natural History Museum? You're walking around, you've got some headphones on, looking at the dinosaurs in the Natural History Museum, and what would be going through the alien's headphones at this point in time?
So, despite the fact that it's quite a somber piece of music, I think it's fitting. I'd play the alien Moonlight Sonata by Beethoven. It's one of those songs that's often played in very dramatic movie scenes and then TV adverts and stuff. But to me, it encapsulates, everything that the museum stands for. The full song has those somber tones, but also some cheery stuff. And, it encapsulates the extinction that we've already discussed. The hope for the future from saving species, and also, the whole discovery and research side of things as well. And yeah, it's just one of those things that I'm not sure if you could plan your route to be able to coincide with the music, unless you were to either teleport or pause the music. But I'm sure you could work something out so that as you walked into a new gallery, an appropriate part of the song was playing, and yeah, hopefully those emotions that that I have connected to the museum would be pervade to the alien through the music.
Yeah, great. Well, that's the good thing about music, and that's partly why we're including songs and films now in Alien Places, because there's certain things which can only be communicated through song and through film, and it's sometimes hard to convey in words the emotions that you want to convey, and so bringing music and song into it is another way of communicating with the alien and expressing what you want to express. So that's a great choice. Great to have some Beethoven being played to the alien. And what about the film that you would show the alien at the Natural History Museum?
So hopefully some of the people that are listening and watching have caught on, but I would play the alien Night at the Museum, just because we've all dreamed of being locked in a natural history museum, whether it's in London, whether it's in Berlin or in the States, and wanting to see what happens at night. We've all dreamed that stuff would come alive and would go crazy, only to be completely back to normal come the morning. And this was particularly true. So during my masters, I spent 6 months at the museum studying frog specimens at the museum. No surprises there. Yeah, so I'd be at the museum 2 or 3 times a week, looking at the amphibian specimens from Southeast Asia and trying to tally up a database of specimens. Look at their taxonomy, their type localities, georeference everything, and just try to make sense of things. And there are times when I'd walk through the galleries after closing on my way out, and just look at things and imagine how they would react, if they were to, about to burst into life, once everybody had left and the doors had been locked. So yeah, I think it's very fitting.
That's great, and also the Night at the Museum film kind of personifies a lot of the animals in the film as well, and gives them kind of personalities. And I think it's always good to be reminded that that animals have, you know, their own personalities and their own individual characteristics as well. And even, you know, within species, they're still individuals. And we often, as humans, group animals together into their species categories if it's one thing. But there's lots of individuality of the animals in that film. So
no, definitely, yeah. And I think that, again, you know, because of its comedy side of things, it does things in in a very different way to, you know, a more serious film. But, you know, it brings home that those messages of, you know, animals being individuals, and yes, you know, it anthropomorphizes them slightly, but, you know, it does tell the watcher that, you know, the animals do have personalities. Yes, some of them can be annoying, some of them can be mischievous, and, you know, if you've watched the birds in your garden, or, you know, your pets for any amount of time, you know, you quickly realize that, you know, yes, they have emotions, and yes, they have personalities. You know, they don't just fall into the category of being an animal and it ends there. You know, they have a whole, you know, subset of feelings and emotions like we do. And, you know, I think it's sometimes a little bit dangerous, particularly to science, to cut the viewpoint of things there. When you look at animals for, you know, any period of time, you realise that not all of them behave in the same way, even when they're, you know, closely related, or from the same family group, or, you know, herd or whatever. You know, some, you know, take more risks, some are, you know, a little bit more shy, and you can easily, you know, convey those emotions and feelings to people as well as to those animals.
Yeah, great. Well, the alien's really looking forward to going to the Natural History Museum, so it's telling me telepathically here that it's looking forward to that final part of the journey. So thanks for those 3 alien places, and I understand that you've also had a think about your alien actions. So this is the sort of spin-off from Alien Places, where we've been having a bit of a theoretical, bit of a philosophical discussion almost about which 3 places we would show in Alien and why. But we also want Alien Places to have a practical, solution-focused element to it, and this is what Alien Actions is all about. So a positive environmental action that you want to do or will do, which is perhaps so obvious to an alien species that it would be doing it already, but it's something that you want to do in terms of making a positive contribution through your actions. So can you tell us about your positive environmental action for Alien Actions?
Yeah, so my positive alien action is to, it's already something I've done, is I've submitted a number of species records to the National Biodiversity Network, including a number of records for common species. You know, most people that see and record wildlife will only record the rarer stuff, and obviously, you know, that produces a bias in records. So, you know, the more mundane, the more everyday animals and plants are just as important, because, you know, without those records, we can't detect population trends. You know, we can't detect declines. You know, we can't always assess where or when they are. And, you know, I think this was highlighted quite dramatically in a piece of research published in 2016 that highlighted that common toads have declined by nearly 70% in the UK over the past 30 years. So yeah, if people weren't recording, you know, toads or wildlife in general, you know, species, you know, could easily, you know, slip into extinction without us even realizing. So, you know, I think it's important to get those records in so that, you know, there is some evidence there that can be used to be able to, you know, determine population trends, size, structure, you know, all those sorts of things.
That's a great positive environmental action to be contributing towards the National Biodiversity Network in terms of their amphibian records. And it's a really good point as well about it's often useful to know when an animal isn't there. So I've been advocating for a while for an awards category called the Nil Return Volunteer of the Year. So actually monitoring a particular piece of habitat and saying that there isn't something there is also very important.
Oh no, of course, yes, particularly when, you know, you want to, you know, potentially develop the land, you know, for, you know, to become housing or a hospital or whatever, you know, people build on land for a whole host of reasons, but also you know, for translocations and habitat modification. You know, it's great to know what's there beforehand before you transplant animals or, you know, undertake, you know, that modification, because if you're trying to target a species that isn't there and they come back, you know, in the subsequent years to do monitoring, and the animals still aren't there, then you've wasted time, money, effort, and you could have spent that elsewhere doing something more meaningful. So yeah, as well as knowing where stuff is, it's also valuable to know where it isn't in space and time.
Yeah, so that's a great environmental action. So thank you very much, Steve, Allain, for sharing with us your alien places. The aliens, looking forward to those 3 places and going on that journey from Cambridge to Borneo to the Natural History Museum. So it just remains for me and the alien to say, Steve, Allain, thank you very much for sharing with us your 3 alien places.
You're very welcome.